This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
And we stay winning. I certainly hope and pray that love continues to win for the family of Andrew Joseph III. We are tracking this trial closely. We heard earlier from one of the organizers on the ground there with Black Lives Matter, Tabitha Jones-Jolivet, now checking in with us again. On his way in and out of the courtroom is independent reporter with the Los Angeles Progressive and The Conversation Live, James Farr. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Dominique. How are you?
I'm blessed. How you doing? What's new? How are things going? Tabitha was telling me the courtroom's been pretty full. That's more than a notion, considering, as you so clearly described yesterday, a giant room.
Absolutely. The courtroom, day two, there were more people there. Today, there are expected to be even more supporters with Black Lives Matter grassroots, local organizations, and friends and family of the Josephs. So it's a somber space. You know, the court is very surreal. I mean, when you're hearing the testimony from witnesses, you're hearing the attorneys, and then again yesterday, Sister Deanna just so eloquently and gracefully sat there as she was prodded and poked, and her whole entire life was examined. And that I just can't imagine having to do that as a parent.
Yeah, it sounds pretty horrible. I know you're writing a series of articles about this case for the LA Progressive and for your other work. As part of that, you spent some time with Andrew Joseph III's dad?
Yes. Yesterday, he came out of court in pretty good spirits. You know, he's a jovial guy as he is by nature, right? And so he came out of the court. He has this kind of chant that he does, you know, when the families are in community. But he said, "Brother, let's go take a drive." And we took an hour drive, and he just, you know, I think he needed to clear his head. He wanted to kind of go down some memories. He showed me the high school that his son had worked so hard to get accepted to and was preparing the next day for his confirmation. I got a chance to really see their connection to the community, where they do their food pantry. I saw the chapel where the young Andrew was eulogized. Just a myriad of things within the community that was very grounding. But he thinks about his son every day. It's obvious.
Yeah. He's really so passionate about. I mean, as a father would be, but he's just a passionate individual from what I've seen. Talk to me about you. You said Mark Clark, who is on the stand, appeared to contradict himself. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that, as a part of his deposition, he had indicated that he had transported the young Andrew to a well-lit area. And we saw in court yesterday through photos and a series of other evidence that was presented and even other testimony that he essentially dropped him off in a dark place, he and the other young men. And so we're seeing that the sheriff's department, again, as I said yesterday, they're digging in. They're blaming Andrew III for this entire incident.
Right. It's an interesting strategy, blaming a child for you dropping him off in the middle of nowhere in the dark without calling his parents. But, I mean, in Florida, you never know. In Florida, George Zimmerman gets off. So maybe they're banking on that all-white jury to deliver them the verdict they're looking for, in spite of what, to me, to any mom, would seem a very shady defense.
Yeah, I mean, well, the defense is doing what they're supposed to do, which
right.
is to deflect and place blame other than on the officer. You know, you're right, this is Florida, and we've seen stranger things, right? And understanding that they took this child, there's no question about that, right? And to expect a child to make decisions that an adult would make is just developmentally not correct. It's not fair to that child. He didn't place himself there. And we've all been 14, and I have a 14-year-old. Sometimes they don't make the best decisions because they're afraid, right?
Well, and the teenage brain. I mean, and afraid is a great point, James Farr, because if your child, my child, who's a little older than that, doesn't make decisions on a regular day, imagine after being detained by the police, interrogated by the police, held in a car, and driven somewhere where you don't know where you are. They're going to be beyond scared, and they're going to be traumatized at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, it's reptilian brain at that point, fight, flight, or freeze. And no one can blame the young Andrew for what happened, right? I mean, he was on not a deserted, but a very busy interstate. And we learned that he traversed the interstate twice. They were literally lost in trying to figure out how to get back. And now it seems as though the defense is saying that the person who told them to go back around may not have even been a police officer. So I assume there's going to be enough that's going to appear from out of nowhere that either did tell them or didn't tell them, but none of the ones that are currently in question are saying that they told him that he needed to go around.
And to be clear, Mark Clark is one of the deputies who is involved in taking Andrew Joseph III. Not all of them will even face this trial because of qualified immunity, correct?
Correct. What's interesting, he's the only one that hasn't been granted qualified immunity. The other two officers have been granted qualified immunity. However, if this case is appealed, everything resets, and those other officers would also have to try to get qualified immunity again. So it's going to be an interesting, this is just the first, this is day 3. There's another 6 or 7 day schedule of hearings. The defense has not taken their position as of yet, and so cross-examination. So next week should be pretty telling.
Yeah, well, this week is already pretty telling. You mentioned the role of the black media here. Can you just give me, because, I notice it's not really being covered. It's not covered on CNN. It's not covered on MSNBC. We talked about that yesterday. Talk to me about the black media and the coverage of Andrew Joseph III.
It's just so important that if we're not here to tell these stories, to sit and bear witness, we're only left with what mainstream narratives are. And if you heard the testimony yesterday, and I've read the local and watched some of the local news channels here just to see how they're reporting out on it, still lost is that the Joseph family, if I had my Black Utopia community, they're my neighbors. Right, that they are the people who I want to live next door to, and so you just don't get that. And I realized yesterday after hearing Sister Deanna's testimony, her story. Sadly, she's been preparing for this her entire life, and by that I mean just her grace, her elegance, and I don't know many, if any, that could hold it together while they're examining their entire life and the decisions they made with their child. It's unconscionable what's happening here and what these families have to go through on this, if they're lucky to get on the fan.
James Farr, so appreciate your checking in with us, giving us your reporter's eye. Where can we find the stories you're writing about this, and how can we follow you?
James Farr Live on Twitter, over at the LA Progressive. Hit that authors tab, and you'll find James Farr as an author, a simple Google.
All right, the LA Progressive, is that a .com or a .org?
.com.
The LA, I get it in my inbox, so I don't have to go on the website. LAProgressive.com. James Farr, appreciate the work that you are doing, and look forward to talking with you in the days ahead, the week ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dominic. Have a good day.
And you as well. Not too late to call me if you want. 800-920-1580. It's KBLA Talk 1580, where we are amplifying black and progressive voices around the clock.
More of First Things First with Dominic DePrima when we come forward. There has Rochester's favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Right now, just digging a little deeper and continuing to follow this story of Andrew Joseph III. There's a lot of contradictions, as James Farr pointed out, on so far, and it's only day 3 of the trial. James Farr pointed out the part about the deputy saying the area where they dropped the child off was well lit, and then the pictures and showing that it was in fact dark. And not only that, the contradiction to an earlier statement that the deputy had said he didn't remember if it was well lit. This to me, I think it looks like it's going well for the family so far, but again, we're in Florida, you never know. One thing I did not realize is that the Florida State Fair has already settled with the family. They did not want this smoke. And so the other thing is the sheriffs tried to say that Andrew Joseph had a phone, and the phone records show he tried to make a few calls before he left the fairgrounds. But if you take a child, it doesn't matter what phone calls they made. If you take a child and you don't contact their parents, you don't contact their school, you're taking them from a school event, then their welfare is up to you, especially if you are an officer of the law who is meant to protect and serve. Not only that, I guess the statement where they say they're kicking him out of the fair, they call it disorderly conduct because they claim he was running. But running does not constitute disorderly contact behavior. Running is simply running, and running is something that kids do. If you're going to detain and eject and take away children in a police van every time they run, there's not going to be any kids left. And this is one disingenuous thing, is it's back to my constant reminding us that we have to be media literate. The more right-wing media, and even some folks attacking me on Twitter, say, well, the kid was kicked out of the fair and then he died, so it wasn't the sheriff's fault. He was kicked out of the fair, he was on his own. But in reality, they put him in a van, drove him to a remote, dark location, and dropped him off, which is not the same as kicking you out of the fair and you're right outside the fairground doors and you can wait for the rest of your schoolmates to come out or wait for your ride to come and pick you up. That is not what happened. He was put in a van and driven to a dark, remote area by a busy highway. That is not just kicking you out of the fair. That is taking you. That is taking you out of the fair. That is taking you and detaining you. And so this strategy of blaming the child, I hope that even in Florida, it does not hold up. It certainly, there are no black people on this jury, which is a little bit or a lot worrisome. We think back to George Zimmerman, there was one person of color, and that person was browbeat to the point where she ended up unhoused and in total disarray after that trial, after being bullied into changing her mind and voting to acquit George Zimmerman. We got a lot to talk about. It's KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dominique DePrima for First Things First.
Courage is contagious. We're KBLA Talk 1580.